Greetings, dear witches, and thank you for tuning in to the Modern Witches podcast, brought to you by the witches behind the Modern Witches Confluence and our Witches Gather event series. I am your host and Modern Witches creatrix, Casey Zabala, and I am here to offer this space to commune with the many multifaceted currents of witchcraft at work in our world. Together, may we collectively re-enchant our realities, both here and between the worlds. Hello, and welcome to the Modern Witches podcast. This is our digital altar space where we'll be talking about Libra season in two parts. And on this episode, we will be focusing on the start of Libra season, which also coincides with the Autumn Equinox. So our altar is a harvest altar and a seasonal shifting altar for this episode. And it's one of my favorite seasonal shifts, and I'm excited to talk about it with my dear friends, Karima and Mariana. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Thank you
Hi,
for
Casey.
having us.
Yeah.
I love the autumn equinox. How do you both feel about it?
I just feel like it's the beginning of holidays parties, for me, kind of.
Mhm.
It's like I
Start
see
early.
Thanksgiving and I see Halloween coming, and I see because I like working with the 6 months period with the solstice or the equinox,
Mhm.
and for me, entering this time is the harvest time, the summer is over. We're coming to a new phase, a new routine, new rituals, because the sun is basically losing space in our world. And so, and of course, north atmosphere. And so it's, for me, it's like just the beginning of a new, of course, season. And it is nice because it represents balance. We're going to also make the connection with Libra, of course, but it represents equilibrium, and it's like how I can manage my life to have time for this or that and rebalance things. And at the same time, I feel like as holidays open, like we open the door, I can see already the ads for Halloween. I can already see the decoration on stores coming up, and it's just like the parties are coming, so that's kind of vibe that I love, my favorite time of the year. So yes, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's
I think we have that in common, all of us.
Mhm.
It's the start of witchy season.
Exactly. It's like, how can you not be happy with that?
Yeah, it feels warm to me. The energetics of it
Mhm.
feel like the colors, the tastes, everything is like orange and auburn and like that rich earth ground brown color, and everything is like leaves are darkening, and that especially like I'm in New York and I love going upstate during this time, September and to October into November. It's just it's over the colors and the smells of like burning like leaves, that people start burning leaves and burning like whatever something, and the foods change, the seasonality changes. It's just everything like you crave more warmth,
Mm-hmm.
like broths and soups and just things like that. It's just so comforting. Everything about this season is just comforting.
I think about like how at this time of the year with the harvest, you're like eating the sun and like storing up the warmth in your body, resourcing yourself in these like really warm ways. And yeah, I think it's a good moment to, if you haven't already started, to like really think about your immune system and tending to that and what nourishing things you can do for your body to make sure that it's building resilience for um yeah, the dark season ahead. And we wanted to share a little bit about this energetics of the equinox. It's the day of where night and day are an equal length.
Mhm.
And this mirrors the scales of Libra in this really beautiful way.
Yeah. because
Yeah.
we know Libra is definitely about a scale. The object that represents Libra is a scale. And so when we think about autumn equinox, it's like the same time of light and dark, you know? And so that represents equilibrium. And it's a new way, like I said before, to find balance and to find balance in our food, in our body, in how we work out, in how we communicate with others. It's just like, do we have, is always it's always, I don't think we can have balance constantly in our life. I think it's just a jungle and a game that we're playing, and and we always have to readjust ourselves and to say, oh, okay, I need to rebalance myself with that. Oh, I drink too much last week. I need to rebalance a little bit and bring more vegetable and nourishing herbs. And so it's a constant work. And when autumn equinox and when the equinox are coming up, it's a great time to utilize that energy because it's here to help us balance all of this and to balance and to play that game of always trying to find balance. We all the time overflow overboard, but how do we come back is the real question, you know?
Mm,
By finding center, by finding what is like at the core where you're always trying to come back to. What is the center that you always, that feels the best to you, that feels the most nourishing, and just having, like, reminding yourself about what is the essence of that core and what is the essence of that center for you, and returning there throughout the changing of the seasons. Because I think it's easier to tap into that center during this time, during this rebalancing time. There's this moment, it's like it's easier to kind of grasp the center that holds the scales,
mm,
so it's just try to, maybe the intention, one of the good, like, intention practices here could be something in regards to, where do I always want to come back?
mhm.
What is the place within me that just feels good no matter what is happening outside of me?
Really love that prompt. Makes me think about too in this chart, which I just pulled up of the equinox, which we'll talk about a little bit, because it's the chart of the sun moving into Libra. But this idea of returning to something that is central to who we are, or our soul energy, maybe one could think of it as, um, makes me think about the myth of Persephone and how the equinox is also mirroring this like descent into the underworld, that Persephone takes their annual pilgrimage back to the land of the dead. And there is a reframing of this myth that I really appreciate, that in particular focuses on Persephone's ability to return, whether it's returning to the land of the dead or returning to the land of the living in the spring. And that part of her nature is so core to who she is, right? Like, it's just, that's her purpose, that's like the quest that she's eternally taking. And I think at the equinox, when we're thinking about this sense of balance, it's like, how do we return to a sense of home? How do we return to that soul purpose or that soul motivation that each of us has in our own unique way? So it's a lovely moment to be meditating on this.
100%.
And I think the chart really speaks to that too. Especially because we have the sun in a trine to Pluto, Lord of the Underworld. So that's very much activated. It's like, okay, in a trine, in this harmonious aspect, we're thinking about how can our egos transform.
Yeah, and that sun trine Pluto, I think everybody should make a note of that, because it's going to be a progression of what you're speaking about, Persephone, because it ends with Sun square and Pluto, the Libra season, which we'll talk about at the end. But I think it's important to know about it in the beginning.
Yeah.
And to know
it's
that
all about cycles.
It starts with, and at 0 degrees with that kind of invitation to Plutonian, that kind of, but you don't know how that, you have to walk there. You have to have this experience, especially the ruler of this season, Venus, is the 29th critical
Yeah.
degree of Libra,
Yeah.
forming a square to Pluto.
It's very interesting because this is kind of it feels also as like it is a closer. We are closing something because Pluto is very important. It's the last time in our lifetime that we're gonna see Pluto in Capricorn. And we have been dealing with that story when there is Libra season coming up with the sun squaring all the time Pluto, and we've been challenged to grow in that area of our lives. And now it's kind of the last chapter. We won't have a sun squaring Pluto in Capricorn. It's kind of, we're closing something here too in that season that are very important. And you have to add to this the fact that the South Node is in Libra. And so we have a very, we can call it karmic energy that is pulling us to recycle, to release, to let go. There is the end of a story here that is unfolding with those square. And with, like I said, we have Pluto in Capricorn since 2008. So it's been a while that we have that. And so looking at where in our chart Libra is and where in our chart Capricorn is, look at the theme of the houses, what is coming up and what we need to release. It's a very releasing energy with the South Node. And again, I just need to point out that Hecate is with the sun. It's at 0 degree. It's an asteroid. About Hecate is really representing when you're at a crossroad or when you're transforming. It's like a huge transformation. And I just want to talk also about what you mentioned, Persephone going back into the underworld for the next 6 months. It's very interesting what we talk about transformation here and releasing and kind of going through a bridge. We're going to the other side. We're finishing something that is very important. And that we want it or not, it's just going to happen with the South Node. It's just a normal cycle of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are liminal times.
Yeah. The Libra part of your chart is going to be like purging a lot.
Oh, I feel it personally. I feel it. Is
Libra.
in my relationship and with my husband, we're having a hell of a time. We are adjusting in so many ways. It's very interesting, very challenging, very transformative. It's tough, but it's just like I just felt it so much, especially when the South Nodes came in.
Yeah, and especially at the beginning of the season with Venus square in Pluto, like I already mentioned, it's like really
right.
It's like the signs are like in our faces with, well, you have this kind of lost voyage to
make it work. Make it work.
That's not what I was going to say. It's to kind of reframe some of the relational dynamics, some of the sense of control and power within any relational dynamics, structures, and why and how those structures within our relationships are there in the first place.
Yeah.
Who put those structures there? Our conscious mind or our subconscious mind from some traditional kind of perspective? What has planted these ideas in our heads, or these values, or this like understandings about the give and take and the exchange? So,
and it's not like we're living already a huge shift with what is a couple, what the woman, or one of the, like the balance between the two partner and what they put on the table. it's just being so reconstruct. They were saying like the millennium generation is, they participate in the baby's life, in the feminine life, 80% more than the past generation. It's just a youth
Wow.
shift. We're like basically like, this old talk about, oh, men doesn't know how to do with women anymore. They don't know if they need to be like going down to the street and like just talk to a woman if they like her or not. It's like the whole, weird discussion about this that is happening around men that I hear often from men. And I'm
Right.
just like, we're just shifting. It's like something is happening. It's like you have to adapt to what women's want because they have a voice now.
I feel like it's like, I think feminism has often like framed progress from the woman's perspective, and really what feminism needs is for more participation, right? It's like it's not just the onus of the woman to affect progress for women. It's
Exactly.
like it is communities, it is
Exactly.
partners,
Yeah.
which is a more of like womanist theory.
Yeah.
Um,
Is and one thing just to say what you were mentioning, Casey, the one thing that I noticed since the South Node is coming into Libra is like we're hearing more and more women. It's been said before, but now it's very loud to say, where are you men? Where are you men to talk also about our right? Where are you to defend us when something bad happened?
right.
There's an horrible cases right now that is happening in France. Horrible. It should
Oh,
do
I
the
know about it.
national
Yes,
news.
Yeah.
we've
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
we've
What?
heard about this.
And we, like a lot of women have been speaking about, because the person who those horrific thing happened, she made it public. She said the shame needs to turn. It's not me who
Right.
should be shamed, it's all those men's. And so it's a whole new shift that a lot of women just click on it and was like, oh my God, yes, we've been talking about it, and now there's a woman standing up and said she's doing it publicly just to swift the notion of shame, and not is not on her, is on them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
a
as
lot
it
of
should
women
be.
have been waiting. There is some men that speak about this, but not a lot. And so there's a big call in France, in Europe, because Europe has hear more about the story, that men, you should be raged and you should be standing up. You should be with us right now.
You should be having conversations with other male identifying people about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should have those conversation, and it's just, and so I can hear the call more and more about people
It's so
identify
difficult.
male, they should speak up more,
Mhm.
and it's just,
I
Um,
love that. Oh, sorry.
go ahead,
Uh,
sorry.
just quickly, the to hold that amount, because it's like it's not a shame of one person. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
shame of three people. It's a shame of a cultural shame, a societal shame. And I'm not like by no means finding excuses. I'm like, what needs to shift within the paradigm of the male to be able to start untangling that? Because it's a lot that has, you know what I mean? It's,
yes.
I don't know how, like, and I'm not the one to have that conversation, honestly. Like, they have to
Well,
have that conversation.
it's so interesting. Like all of this is coming up out of this conversation about like Venus squaring Pluto in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
Because like
Mm-hmm.
this could be an opportunity where, and this is coming up around this time, it's like, how do we prompt other people in our lives to consider these things differently? And how do
Mm-hmm.
we like take them to the darkness and say, look at this shadow material that you participate in. How do you take ownership of that? Like, how do you actively show up to
Yeah.
heal these things? Because it's, we all
It,
Yeah.
participate in this culture, whether we like it or not, in some
Yeah.
ways.
mm-hmm.
But on
And
the same day, September 22nd, Venus moves into Scorpio. So it's like making that
exactly.
square to Pluto, and then it moves into Scorpio.
that's why I was like, it's very interesting. I was just about to jump on that, the fact that Venus after the square jump in Scorpio, which is a very deep, deep sign when we talk about also the underworld, when we talk about what is deep in our unconscious, what needs to be revealed and heard with that square. I feel like it's just a shot that's like, okay, let's do the chaos and let's enter into Scorpio to really dig. And it's just, it's also a healing sign for me. Scorpio is going deep into the mind, is looking at his wound, is not hiding from the pain. And that is very interesting that we enter a phase where we're going to have eclipse when we have the South Node in Libra, we are the Sun enter Libra, and we have Venus in Scorpio.
The
And
whole month, pretty much. Most of it,
because
like, yeah.
Venus rules Libra, so it's very important to know where she is right now. So yeah,
Mhm.
very interesting, very interesting beginning of the season, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's very
It
interesting.
very much echoes that Persephone energy.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like
Mhm.
feeling Persephone very strongly lately, archetypally.
Mhm.
And it just seems very real. And I just want to say too, like the way that Venus is in Scorpio, there's like a wide spectrum of that. And I feel like there's a lot of deep potential. And also, there are ways that Venus in Scorpio can be like obsessive, um, in ways that might not feel totally healthy. So just like honoring how that Venus in Scorpio is showing up for you, and whether or not it is supported. And I would say like having some kind of framework or context around any shadow material that is Venus shaped that's coming up for you, like anything around money, sex, relationships. There might be a pull to like go really deep and maybe dark into those places. So
Mm-hmm.
making sure you're
Mhm.
feeling resourced and
Yeah,
talking about it with other people because it can be secretive too.
it's very taboo.
Very taboo.
It's very much like not allowing oneself. There is a cathartic quality to Venus in Scorpio that allows oneself, herself, to experience the spectrum of perceived shame and guilt and otherness or obsession qualities, obsessive qualities that
Yeah.
a lot of people have in behind the scenes. We all, I think, have that that quality of Venus and Scorpio within us somehow, somewhere, especially Pluto in Scorpio generation.
Mm-hmm.
And for this transit specifically, I think also there are a couple like layers to this because this Venus is ruled by Mars, and Mars is in its full sign in Cancer throughout the whole, like very slow, very like especially by like beginning of October, it's like really slowing down, preparing to turn retrograde, but it's already slowing down in October. So like, but what I like about this, so Venus in Scorpio is throughout this Libra season is going to form trine to that Mars and trine to Saturn and Pisces. So it's going to be a lot of watery energies. So this Venus in Scorpio has support to really transform some of like her ideas about her, like herself, about the more obsessive or attached to certain things parts. I don't know if I'm like explaining this, but we all have something that we are attached to that we're ashamed of, but it's hard to let it go. There are memories and parts of ourselves or desires or something, just like reframing your relationship to that which you're attached to will be very supported this season, I think. All
And
right.
I just want to add something.
Uh-huh.
Sorry. Because I don't know, something is stuck in my head since Casey talked about Persephone, and she said that she feel her like her energy around a lot, but I was like, that just makes sense for me. Persephone, when you see the story around her being grabbed from, the Hades, the god of the underworld, and basically like losing her power of choice through this, and then kind of being reborn and find her power again and be able to move and be the queen of the underworld, but also going in the world 6 months and just having that power. She grew from this traumatic event, and I cannot stop comparing with the case in France when she talked, and you mentioned shame so many times, Mariana, and how she used the word shame, and how from a traumatic experience that she just decided to shift the narrative and empower. There's a very empowering thing through something that maybe is dramatic or maybe is traumatic for you or for someone or for a group, and like just shifting the narrative in a very powerful way. It just felt very potent at that time right now. And with Venus in Scorpio, just talking about the shame, I just feel like how do you can switch the narrative or switch in the mind, like, no, that's a power. That's something that I can transform into a power, not be ashamed anymore of that part of myself or something like that. Just feel there's a lot of parallel in all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Or return shame where it belongs, like you said earlier.
Oh, return shame where it belongs. Exactly. The balance, the scale, the justice. Libra is about justice. So.
And shame as an emotion just is it really serves to like shut us down, makes us hide, makes us want to be small. But the act of like exploring shame or communicating shame is sort of like the antidote to healing shame. So that's definitely something to think about this Libra season.
Yeah.
In a big way.
One more thing quickly. I just did a Pluto class, and what I got out of that is that I don't consider Pluto to rule Scorpio, but there are qualities that are very Plutonic to Scorpio. And I have direct association. So whenever planet goes for me to Scorpio, it tries to discover the wealth, tries to discover something that is the unseen potential and unseen value. That is the value that is not like available readily, but it's of massive proportions. So here is like, what is the value that can be uncovered here? Ask yourself that. What can you really, like, it's an alchemical process of transformation. What can you uncover that is so profoundly, like, it's a source of the greatest wealth, really. Anything in Scorpio is a source of the greatest wealth.
Yeah, I love that. So we'll keep Persephone with us, obviously, but we'll move to the next series of transits we want to talk about, which are on September 25th. There's a couple transits on this day. Mercury in Virgo is opposite Neptune in Pisces, and Mercury is also forming a trine to Pluto in Capricorn at the same time. So it's like, I don't know, it's just interesting to see this dynamic with Mercury, who's like the psychocomp. They're the communicator of the zodiac, and they're in conversation with both Neptune and Pluto, these big collective planets.
Yeah.
So this feels like a download moment.
So much. And it's also like just, I think the day before, but it's separating from the trine to Uranus as well. So Uranus is there. So if all the outer planets are like talking to Mercury, all of them at Mercury, which is in its domicile in Virgo at the last degrees, and they all like shooting their like arrows messages at that Mercury. And they're like, listen, but you gotta know something, not about just your immediate next steps, but there's a bigger picture that you need to somehow like integrate within your mental landscape that is important to take further. And it feels like even opposition to Neptune, because they're right after the opposition to Neptune within hours that trine to Pluto, it feels to me like if it was just opposition, I would be like, well, just gotta be like careful with what you think. It might be like a bit divorced from reality of what's happening. But in this particular configuration with Neptune in the bisextile to not bisextile with two trines between Uranus and Pluto and opposition to Neptune, I'm like, you need to consider that something that seems impossible, so far out of reach, so massive within your imagination, within your perception of reality, might actually be true. It might actually be possible if you manage to like kind of give it enough Virgo like structure and shape, and give something really grand, real long-term, really like rooted in your imagination because of the opposition to Neptune, to take form through those outer planets. And it's connected to the collective. It's connected to how the world is changing and your thought patterns about what you need to do needs to change with that. There's a great power there. It feels really good to me, that whole Mercury thing.
I agree that I feel like it's a level of the world. Like you can see this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, those are huge planets that are very focused on our society. And I agree with you that this shift is happening. For me, it can happen on a personal level, but for me, when I see those three transits, it's very much screaming, the world, the world is shifting. The world wants to change. The world wants to do better. But
And
I
all of these
just
planets, I just wanted to say, like, all these planets are retrograde as well. So it's like, and with Mercury having just gone through this retrograde, I just feel like it's an invitation to be like, let's take a step back and like look at what needs to be revisioned here, on this collective scale.
Yeah. Because I feel we have the free theme. We have Uranus in Taurus, the land. We have Neptune in Pisces, the dream. We have Pluto in Capricorn, society, government, institution. It's a lot. The like representation of different things that are very important in our world. And yes, like you mentioned, they're all retrograde. So there's a shift already in there. And Mercury on mine is in Virgo is trying to make sense of all of it and trying to see what can be done to improve the system. Virgo automatically is, yes, we say it's detail oriented, it's analytic, it's all of that, but it's because it wants to improve the process. It wants to make it efficient. It wants to make it easier and like well organized. So there is a shift here. In what way? I'm just wondering what shape or form is gonna take. Is it something that's happening that gonna wake up some of us, or is like I'm wondering what shape and form it will take. And with Mercury, I feel like news, of course, like something coming up. But I'm just curious about that.
I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just my own Mercury and Virgo in the fifth house talking, but I do feel like there's a component of wellness or like health here that's kind of highlighted. It's like, how can we be well in a world that is afflicted by so much pain and turmoil and hatred? And I don't know, I think there's there's a lot to be said about collective action, but there's also a lot to be said for like individual responsibility and how do we come together to kind of like create systems of wellness and health, like truly supporting each other and ourselves as best we can in whatever circumstance we find ourselves in, which are variable and sometimes extreme at this moment, especially. So it's interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But one more thing. I like what you said, Casey, about like that it's noted that it's all the planets are retrograde. So to me, it's still, if Mercury deals with other people one way or another, it deals with like Gemini, like immediate environment, or sixth house, Virgo, like work environment, or it's just dealing with others. For me, Mercury can't be separated from that. And this one after another aspects to our planets that are retrograde, it's something there's something that is being restructured within our mental hemispheres that we kind of already know where it's going. I have a sense. But there is not enough Virgo component. We need, like, there's not enough routine or habitual approach to the changes that have transpired, and something within our like priorities, or how we deal with people on day-to-day basis, or what do we prioritize. If we do speak about Mercury and Virgo, prioritization is very important, like in a like more expanded worldview, in the world where we want to go. But there's something that I don't know how like explain this, but it's something we already understand, but we like understand with the mind, but our body has not caught up with that. So we are trying to create habits or routines or connections or something that can allow us to cross over to those new habits, new patterns, new connections that are coming through once all those outer planets will be direct. It's sort of like we know the changes within what we do day in and day out needs to change, and we kind of understand what it is, but we need to get our bodies or our like habits or our routines up to date to that. Something like that.
Yeah, I really feel that.
Good.
And then just the next day, Mercury will move into Libra. So it's like setting a new course there.
Yep.
Wow, Mariana and Karima just made the same face. It's amazing.
We're both Aries rising.
There we go. You're like,
what was the face? What's the emotion?
It was like indignation.
There I go. There's so much in Libra
Like,
now.
great. You're like, yay. Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll start. Venus or Mercury in the Venus rule Libra. So Mercury in Libra to me is, and I don't want to offend anyone who is Mercury in Libra, that's not but I find it to be incredibly willing to say whatever is expected of her to say in order to preserve the balance. It's a shadow side of that. Right? But because Venus is in Scorpio, I think we're going to go deeper with this Mercury in Libra. We're going to go into why do we people please the way we do? Why do we say something that we do not mean? And all of us do that at some point or another. Every single person have been at fault with this. Like, just say what you mean. That is the biggest issue and biggest hurdle for Mercury in Libra. Just say what you mean. And this Mercury might try to be like all diplomatic about what really matters, but that Venus in Scorpio is really gonna like create issues with what comes through if you do not say what you mean here. You'll have to say what you mean, and you have to come from a place of more aligned and more like exalted values, because you have to be really like from your core. You have to speak about your values from your core with this Mercury, Libra, Venus, and Scorpio dynamic happening. It's not gonna like fly the whole, like we're just gonna preserve like perceived peace. Perceived peace won't be able, it's gonna be very hard to preserve with this combination. Perception of peace.
Oh, Cream, are you muted?
I feel like it's definitely true. I agree with Mariana, but the challenge or the shadow side of having Mercury in Libra is different. I just very agree, and I feel it can be also on the bright side great to negotiate deal. It's a good mediator. It's sometimes it feels a good mediator to preach for two parties than their own party, if if it makes sense what I'm saying. Preaching for themselves is harder than trying to negotiate with or helping two people negotiating and to find a middle ground. And that is the power of Mercury in Libra, is like the possibility to find good negotiation. Again, here it's a very enhanced because we have, yes, we have the sun, but we have the south node again. And so dealing with finding the middle ground, expressing ourselves, releasing what needs to be released, we find a way of finding justice for ourselves and in finding fairness for ourselves. It's very important. When autumn equinox, when Libra season, is all about, do I give more, or am I not giving enough in the table, and how much you overextend yourself and how much you don't. Like, is it too much? Is it too little? And just rebalancing that is going to be very important. And Mercury will be here to help you voice it. But like we said, there's a shadow part to it, which is like not saying what you really need to say. And the South Node here will push you to do it. It definitely will push you in order to rebalance things. So it's a tricky, for me, Mercury in Libra at the time that we're in, especially with Pluto in Capricorn squaring by sign with Libra. It's a challenging time to express what we need and what we want, but karmically, again, we will have to. Like, there is this karmic point that is there, and I keep repeating it because it's so important and shift everything, because there is something that is pushing us to do it. So yeah, don't know if it makes sense what I said, but I hope it did.
Oh, definitely. No, that was great.
Okay.
I really appreciate that.
Um,
mhm.
Can I add something to that
Yeah.
as well? Because keep in mind, this Mercury in Libra is burned by the sun, so it's invisible. From the very ingression, it's in the rays of the sun. So I just want to like talk a bit more of the global scenarios. Two parties, two countries, two people, whatever that is that are trying to find some middle ground is gonna fall through the cracks most likely, unless there is like a hyper awareness and emphasis on honesty and what we're just talking about on that straightforwardness, which is very hard for this, especially like burned Mercury in Libra, ruled by Venus in Scorpio, ruled by Mars in Cancer. So everything, and it's gonna whatever. It's like two parties or two countries or two whatever companies in some kind of negotiation, seemingly saying the right thing, and then from behind the scenes, because Venus in Scorpio and Mars in Cancer, behind the scenes, it's fallen through the cracks. Something like that happening is very likely.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
Marina,
that
I have to jump in again because you said something that I was like, of course. Uh, when you said two countries, it's just like I was like, oh my God, like because when not long ago after South Node entered Libra, with what is happening in Palestine, October 7 happened with the Sun being in Libra, South Node being in Libra, at a time where Mars was almost conjunct the South Node. So there is a, like when you say two countries, there's obviously going to be, like, we're expecting something happening in those time with the war that is happening over there, the genocide that is happening over there. And it's
coming
very
up on a
interesting to
year, which is
coming up on a
Mhm.
year. And so we saw this story being unfold as soon as the South Node enter Libra. And when you're talking about two countries, it's just like peace being breaked, but it was never peace over there. It was always an
Mhm.
occupation on Palestinian land, but that is becoming intensified at 100%. And now we have just today more than it was 700,000 people in Israel protesting to force Netanyahu to do a deal.
right.
And I just feel it's going to be increasing from people, Israelis, to find a deal to release hostages after the 6 that have been basically murdered. So it's very interesting when you said two countries. I was like, of course, the story has started there with the South Node in Libra. I think it's going to be even more intensified at this time during Libra season. It just makes sense. But
Mm,
anyway, I wanted
yeah.
to point that out because it's very being intensified now with people living in Israel want to make that deal, and you see a separation from citizen to the what Netanyahu is doing, even if over there was still in a very, for me, with what I've saw, very brainwashed
Mhm.
population, um, very, very intensively, like being brainwashed over hate, like basically deshumanize, how you say deshumanize, like Palestinian, deshumanize, like they say, like when you do a very full intensified brainwashing of like hatred and on
Mm.
another community and lying about it, and it's very
Propaganda, yeah.
yeah,
Stronger word
propaganda,
than propaganda.
definitely.
Self-interest.
And so there is
Yeah.
that breaking that is happening, not as strong as I we wish, but it's still starting here. It's starting somewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's important to note that the Mercury Cazimi um in Libra at 8 degrees of Libra is on September 30th. And
Mhm.
then just a couple days later, we do have a solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra.
Mhm.
So like, I don't know, I just have to say this, maybe it's like so obvious, but like Libra is the sign of justice.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So here we are, like really, you know, I think a lot of us are just like at this point begging, praying, at our wits' end here, like really
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that something shifts and
Yeah.
really trying to maintain hope. And
Yeah.
hopefully
Um,
this will be something that shifts the tides. But we can talk about
Yeah.
this solar eclipse.
yeah, it will
Mm-hmm.
start bumpy on September 30th, like as
Yeah.
Casey just said. It's Sun, Mercury Cazimi, Mercury conjunct Sun at 8 degrees of Libra. Also on the same day, Mars will trine Saturn in Pisces. So whatever will be happening, like September 26th up to the like few days up to September 30th, might not be what it seems, and we will learn more on September 30th. That's what I'm trying. Yeah, just
Yeah.
and in your personal lives, it's like just do not lie to yourself with Mercury and Libra. Do not be dishonest with yourself about what is of value and what is fair to you as well. that is something on a personal level. Yeah, eclipse.
Because it all ripples out, right? Yes,
Yeah,
eclipse. Here we
it's
are.
all I'm like
It's
elephant in the
just
room.
Elephant in
it's
the
just
room.
looking at it. I didn't
Exactly.
see that Lilith was in the mix too.
Yeah,
At
Yeah.
the same
I
10 degrees is in it.
my astrology teacher, like I kind of like I always watch her, but I'm trying to pretend that I don't see her.
Really? I
I'm
love
not
that.
seeing a
That's great.
yeah.
I'm always like, oh, you're here? Okay, I don't see you. I'm like, that's my relationship to Lilith. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, because my astro, it's not like an ultimate truth, but she tells me, she's like, she'll do what she needs to do. But because if you don't have a correct relationship with Lilith, she'll take you to the extremes. So just like be aware, but do not be hyper focused on her. And that's my relationship. I'm aware, but I'm not hyper focused. You do what you need to do, and I'll just do what I need to do with information that's provided. I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm like, it's kind of almost like a fear-based actually thing that I have with Lilith.
I was just to say that sounds a little like, ooh.
I'm like afraid of her because she's so shadowy. She's so like I'm not sure that I understand I don't think most people really understand what she does. That's the thing. She's that apogee of the moon where she is, that furthest point of the moon away from so it's like it's so dark there. So no amount like sometimes I'm like how much consciousness and awareness do I need to have to really truly understand what's happening here with the Lilith? And I'm like, I don't think I can fully. So that's my personal relationship.
Yeah, it really feels like it's an archetype. She's like the vessel for so much fear, right? Like, so when we tap into that kind of energy, it's like we have to reckon with our own fear, right? About our power and like also why people fear us or why we, the parts of ourselves that are deeply shadow for other people projections.
Yeah, it's for me, it's more than Pluto. It's further than Pluto in my.
Yeah, and she's when we say and when Karima says that Lilith is here, she's literally at 10 degrees of Libra.
Yeah, so
at the same degree of this eclipse. So she is menage a trois this eclipse. Like she's in it.
I love that.
that.
I just love it. Very, very, it's just on point.
It's
Casey,
Lilith.
menage a
It's
trois.
Lilith.
We'll
It's
talk about
Lilith.
menage. It's
Yeah.
definitely the moon, the sun, and Lilith.
Swingers, menage a trois, bring it on. It's Lilith.
And the South Node is so close. It's just I do like this one for me. It's
and Mercury is at 11 degrees of Libra also.
It's just
so
like too many people on the it look like it's like it's look like a drama, a telenovela, with like a lot of cheating and like too many things happening at once,
Mercury was
it's on
in
October
it.
2nd. I don't know. I don't remember if anybody
Yes,
mentioned
October 7th.
October 2nd.
Second.
October 2nd, the new moon solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Libra happening. Just I don't know. I don't remember if we mentioned that. I think
no, that's great. It's important to restate. I feel like we just really got sucked into the eclipse vortex.
Like when we saw the chart, we were like,
Yes.
It's a very difficult, it's square, like this eclipse ruled by Venus in its detriment in Scorpio, squared by Mars in Cancer, is just so, it's a new beginning that is asking us to actually go and explore the underlying themes, shadows, and what prompts us to actually have this particular new beginning. It's not about it's not about what we want. It's like why, and go far to identify the whys. And it's very relational. It's very relational, not just romantically. It's very relational with friends, like contracts, people, associates, whoever you deal with on one-on-one basis, especially with Mercury being there. It's very relational. It's very contracts, agreements, promises, like all of that, and understanding why do we engage in those and why do we feel a certain way about some of those.
Yeah, it's
new
like Mars is
contract.
going to push us to do all of that work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think like I feel like eclipses, there's no opt-out option, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this with Mars, like literally pushing us into that really intimate, uncomfortable place. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely feels like there's likely to be confrontation of some kind or another here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that demands a lot of like showing up.
Emotional showing up, because there's
Mhm.
a beautiful trine between Venus. It's all like gonna perfect later, but I will consider it active because it's applying and it's within 3-degree orb, all of that. The ruler of the eclipse is in beautiful water trine with Mars and Saturn, Mars in Cancer and
Mm-hmm.
Saturn in Pisces. So it's like, and Libra is very cerebral. It's an air sign. It's a cardinal air sign. It's very much about like gotta go because we gotta create something of value that benefits me and you, us and them, all that, like let's get into this. But if we are not, like, listen to your intuition during this eclipse, listen to how things make you feel. That is where the actual truth will be. And a lot of the people, unfortunately, like are really like, we all are actually disregard or discard our feelings and how our intuitive insights about things because they make sense mentally. Here it can be dangerous. Don't do that.
I'm just gonna I don't want to repeat what you just said because I just agree with everything, and I was thinking exactly the same thing. I was just
Mm-hmm.
thinking what you both mentioned about relationship. This is definitely for me new moon that is eclipse that is very, very driven by what's going on in my relationship around me. They can be romantic, they can be platonic, that can be partnership at work. It can be any type of relationship that requires a one-on-one, that is a one-on-one relationship. I feel it's gonna be very under the scoop. And yeah, trying in water. It cannot be more explicit. It's definitely about your emotion and what you feel at the moment. The brain with Libra is going to try to make sense of it, try to say, I need that partnership because I need to do this and this and this and this. But there's a breakthrough into Libra with this eclipse. And so the mind is not functioning, I will say right or 100% because the south node, because it's an eclipse, because the light is being hit. So your emotion is your compass, is where you need to go to understand what you need to do next. Is
Mm-hmm.
like it should be your emotion because it's a trine, because it's powerful with Saturn and Mars and Venus. Is like is guiding you somewhere that your brain maybe is not ready for. And the release is here. The release is definitely here during that eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like Marina said, follow your intuition is like as simple as that. Is like the hardest aspect is going to be to separate what your mind is saying and what your heart is saying. It's always the conflict, right? It's our story as a human being, what my mind is saying and what my heart is saying. And definitely here the message is the heart know the way. It's very cliche what I'm saying, but it's just in the chart. It's literally in the
Mm-hmm.
chart. So yeah.
Safety,
Mm-hmm.
safety response. You will,
Mm-hmm.
it's like what your heart, but also it's like what is safe. Are this
Mm-hmm.
partnership safe? Is this person safe? Is this environment safe? Because it's like Venus and Scorpio and Mars and the Mars in Cancer. It's like like the intuition will be from the perspective of safety,
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
sense of like my body feels good or not good here. It feels
Mm-hmm.
welcomed or unwelcomed here. Things like that. Mercury is still burned during this eclipse. It's in the rays of the sun, but now with Lilith. And with Lilith, what I've noticed, Lilith will try to get us to see something we don't want to see by presenting the opposite. So what I'm trying to say here is that like something too good to be true, but you feel not so good about it, but you buy into something because it's like like you discard that shadowy, intuitive, animalistic part of yourself. Lilith here with Mercury would be like, she'll present something too good to be true to test how much you trust yourself and your instincts. That's how Lilith operates. She will get you to see that divide between your like hidden material and what's on the like forefront, if it makes sense.
I pulled a card for this eclipse from the Weird Sisters, and I got Candle for Creativity, which I think is really interesting in this conversation, because I think sometimes when we're pushed into conflict or something is exposed that is difficult for us to understand, creativity can be the best outlet for like integration or exploration. So I don't know, especially with Mars here, it's like there's so much energy that's pushing us in this direction. And if we don't have a way to manage it or just like be with it, yeah, it can sort of take over, right? It can like really either drain us or push us into these like extreme expressions. So I'm taking this Candle for Creativity and just like making a note to, yeah, find an outlet for that during this time. Like just be in a creative mindset about this, because creativity is generative. And so if we can think about these conflicts as generative, or, you know, places of fertility for us, I think that might be interesting.
But
Yeah.
I also think that the link, when I think about creativity and I have to like attach an element to it, I will definitely think of water. Water is about creativity. It's about getting like you emotional, you vibe flow to create something. And so I think turning towards creativity for that new moon is actually a great way of healing and let it go and heal. And so I do think this card represent like what for me was very literal, like what can we do? What is the action in a weird way that we can do during that new moon? And it can be writing, molding something, drawing, whatever it is. It just felt like a very good way to express the time that we're in.
Yeah. Turn to all your tools, you know, just like to take care of yourself at this intense moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take it easy. Don't feel pressured by this lunation. It feels pressuring.
Yeah.
It feels like gotta forge this contracts, connections, agreements.
Yeah.
All that. Libra, like to what case is the card that you put? It's very creative energy. Libra is a man-made art. Museums and sculpture and all that, like that architecture, it's under Libra and Capricorn because it's Saturn's exaltation of, but creating man-made art, beautiful things, it's all there. So creativity makes sense here.
Yeah.
Well,
On that note,
here we are at the end of this episode. And I just also want to remind folks to check out our upcoming offerings. We are obviously hosting the Witches Confluence in November 2nd, which is going to be such a beautiful gathering. Our theme is spiritual activism, and it's really all about fortifying our spiritual selves to do the hard work of showing up and advocating and creating a healed world. So hope you join us in that effort. If you can't make it live to San Francisco, we do have online content. We have online tickets, and we have some amazing workshops happening online to support all of our global community. So tune in and join us. And we'll chat to you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Modern Witches podcast. We hope you've been inspired to cultivate your own magic and to craft your own spiritual practices. Let us know what sparked your curiosity by leaving us a comment on this episode or leave us a review. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. Your feedback and engagement truly fills our cups. If you're looking for more ways to gather with your fellow witches, please support our work on Patreon. Learn more at modernwitches.org. Blessed be.